All right, so let's get underway. Then people are still joining, but I'm sure they can catch up. So today's webinar is a fresh start, how to keep clean in your Marketo instance. So we're going to be talking about data hygiene primarily. We're going to be looking at some of the areas where you can improve your data hygiene in Marketo, and importantly, look at what actions can you take away today and what can you go and do in order to tackle data hygiene as a problem. So if you're new to JTF Marketing, we've been around for around 8 years. We're a global team of experts who focus purely on Marketo Engage. So it's all we do day in, day out. You would say that we are fans of the platform. We would like to think that we love the challenges that surround the platform. And we really help our customers do more with the platform and actually think about how do we get the marketing automation platform to really make our lives easier? What things can we automate? How can we improve the overall processes as well? We are a ISO certified organization, so we take information security very seriously, and that's important when we start to talk about data hygiene and how we can tackle some of the common challenges in the world of Marketo. So I'm going to be your host today. I'm James Fletcher, one of the certified masters here, or architects in old Marketo terminology for Marketo Engage. And we're going to be talking about cleaning up your instance, what tools are available for you, how do we save you some time and money, and how do we make this an always-on activity, and what is the quarterly cleaning checklist that you should be working from on a regular basis. So hopefully some of these areas will cover some of your pain points that you've already experienced with Marketo. If you've joined this webinar, I imagine that you've probably sat there and thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if our database was squeaky clean and we got great results all the time? Again, we're going to help you with that during the next 30 minutes. This webinar will be recorded, so if you need to drop off at any point, feel free to do so. We will send you the recording after today's webinar. So first, let's talk about why we should consider cleaning up our Marketo database. There's obviously two angles on this, right? One is poor data quality. What does that mean? What does that actually result in when it comes to our campaign engagement? Or even if we're looking at the results of marketing spend, right? So if you're spending money on acquiring new contacts into your database or engaging those existing contacts, you're not going to get the same results as someone who's making sure that their database is squeaky clean. And there's kind of two elements to this, right? There's the overall data hygiene element around validity of email addresses, missing fields, there's inaccurate data points, there's split intelligence over duplicate records. There's lots of ways we can slice and dice data hygiene in Marketo. And one of the areas that we'll talk a lot about today is duplicates, right? Because they are pretty common in Marketo. They are by default or by design created in Marketo in order to make sure that you do not lose any of your activity or engagement history. But what that does mean is we need tools in order to facilitate the cleanup of duplicates within our instance. Now, all of this, when we start putting it into context, does actually impact what we pay for Marketo, because we pay by contact. So it's really important that we're looking at managing that license fee as best we can so that we can have all the bells and whistles we want to in our Marketo package and not just have 300,000 contacts where 60% are marketable. Why keep the 40% if they're not going to be valuable to you in driving an ROI? And we can talk about it in many different lenses as well. You know, we keep those all in there because one day we might need to send an email to those customers that have unsubscribed, but we don't really do any customer comms from Marketo, et cetera, et cetera. Again, there's maybe just a few different ways we can look at that data. Now, there's a couple of different ways which you can clean up your instance, right? When we talk about the instance as a whole, we might be looking at how can we facilitate automation of data hygiene and management tasks. So cleaning up the instance, campaign archiving, checking that the smart campaigns running against the lead management programs are actually still relevant and keeping them up to date. We can also look at automated rules-based deduplication. So JTF Marketing have a service that we provide as a managed service, which allows you to have an always-on deduplication and data hygiene service. So if you're considering just outsourcing completely data hygiene because it's not a one-off task, then definitely have a chat with us after this webinar and we can give you a bit more detail. Of course, you can look at global forms, trying to consolidate data through merging maybe multiple cookie IDs together, or trying to use global forms to consolidate the number of forms that you've got across your different campaigns. Also really important. Again, templates, whether it's program templates, email and landing page templates, clean them up, archive the old stuff out. It doesn't take that long, but it's really important to make sure that you keep your instance clean so that it will operate at the speed you're expecting. The fourth one we talk about always when we're looking at cleaning up your instance as a whole is naming conventions around your programs. I'm not sure how many of you will be already doing this, but alphanumeric programs, we all often tend to use date structures at the beginning of a program in order to make it easier to go through and deactivate and archive. Now, depending on your process, you might do this in a quarterly or a biannually annual basis. There are some quick ways in which we can do it by using the APIs. So again, if you're interested in that, happy to have a chat with you on how do we use the API to identify what we should be deactivating and then deactivating it through the API without having to go through one by one and deactivating campaigns or even moving them to the archive folder. We can also do that through the API as well. Now, it's really important to be aware that duplicates generally make up around 25% of a database in Marketo. They are typically distorting all of your analytics, all of the performance of your marketing generated leads and revenue because you've got duplicate information across two records. Now, it's really important that we hone this into a single record and manage those duplicates into a single record in order to get the relevant information. Now, depending on the industry that you work in, if it's financial services or you're financially regulated in any way, then you may want to consider the compliance risks of having duplicate records in your database. If you're just looking at how well your campaigns are performing and you can't quite see the results and you have a lot of duplicates, again, you might want to consolidate these to make sure that your engaged and scored leads are passed over to sales at the relevant point in time. And importantly, that your campaign results are actually showing the true reflection of your impact. Now, it's really important when we start looking at even lead sources, right? When we've got duplicate records, we might have the oldest record engaging or the newest record engaging, and that might change our lead source, whether it's accredited in this financial year or this campaign or a previous campaign. So again, really important to just get clarity on that as well. I've already pulled this stat before we got to the slide, but 25% of all records within Marketo Engage are considered duplicates. This is from our own research. So we run data hygiene reports across a range of customers who run instance reviews with us, as well as our existing customers where we're working with them on a regular basis to improve their data hygiene. And so looking at all of those instances that we've surveyed over the last few years, we've seen on average about 25% of all records being duplicates. Now that's 25% of your license fee being paid towards contacts that aren't actually real individuals for you, right? Because you've already got them existing in the database. Now, I know there's nuances to everybody's business and the way we look at duplicates might be very different depending on the organization. Of course, we have some records where they are duplicates by purpose, right? We are creating duplicates for a reason, and the identifier within Marketo is not always email address. So we can use strings in order to identify the duplicate records as well. So if you work in a slightly more complex environment, then it's definitely something worth having a look at whether you want to tackle those duplicates. Of course, when we think about the management of duplicates, when we talked about this in the beginning in terms of what is the impact, what does it cost? You'll know how much you're paying for your license fee, but again, if we think about it as 25%, I always think about this in the context of if we're paying for more contacts, then we're not actually getting access to the bells and whistles and features that we'd like to. Of course, we'll get some new capabilities available in Marketo in the last updates, like predictive content, which is now free of charge on every subscription. Again, there's certain things like that which we can use, but maybe you want to get into target account management. In order to free up the budget, we can clean up the database, reduce the overall license fee on renewal, and then buy those additional functionalities and capabilities that we need. So how do we handle duplicates in Marketo? So duplicates in Marketo are natively identified by email address. If you're loading any data through APIs, whether it's through Salesforce, whether it's through a custom integration, whether you're uploading lists, and even in some cases forms, will create multiple contacts. Now, this again, as I mentioned before, is all about keeping the attribution of those individuals and allowing you to make the choices of who do you keep. But that is a common source. Now, one thing that's really important is that you can go through in Marketo and merge each dupe one by one, which is going to take you a bit of time, but you can actually do it. You can clear that list down by actually going through one by one, choosing which fields you want to win, et cetera, et cetera. That's obviously not going to be scalable for a lot of you. Again, if you think about 25% of your database, it's a lot of time to spend going through one by one. Even the interns don't like it. Having been one of those interns that have gone through a deduplication project once before, it's not very fun, right? No one likes doing it. What can we do for you? We can help you by automating that always-on deduplication service as part of this managed service. So if you'd be interested in finding out a little bit more, feel free to scan this QR code or follow up with us after this webinar or drop a message into the chat and we can go into a bit more detail with you. Top level of it is, it's rules-based deduplication. You choose which fields win or lose. We run it as a fully managed service, which means you'll get a monthly report as well as recommendations for improving your data hygiene and management. And it's completely hands-free. So you don't have to get involved with it other than the initial setup and rules-based, and then we'll come back to you and present the results. Of course, by doing Marketo first deduplication and not deduplication through the CRM, you won't lose any historic data. So the engagement data will be merged together. If any of you have done a CRM first cleanup, you may have seen that you've lost data because you've gone through and deleted a range of contacts or leads or persons within Marketo, and that's lost the activity history. This is the only way to maintain it, and it will work into your CRM as well from a Salesforce perspective. Microsoft Dynamics, however, slightly more complicated scenario. But again, let's have a chat about that if you're challenged by any duplication efforts in Microsoft Dynamics. So let's have a little think about this kind of quarterly cleaning checklist. So there's multiple areas here where we need to think about how do we clean up Marketo? How do we spring clean it, even if you want to get into that context? Of course, when we look at data, this is the primary area where you might want to focus your time. Again, checking who is inactive or unengaged, and we can do this in multiple ways. We can build smart lists in our instance, which allows us to understand who hasn't engaged in the last 90 days by web visits, form fills, clicks and links, opens emails, maybe sales activity even coming through from your CRM. Again, what you're trying to identify here is who in your database isn't engaging with any of your content. Now, there is a kind of strand to this, which is important. You might choose just to get rid of them entirely because they're unengaged. On the other hand, you may choose to build an engagement program in order to get them engaged with your brand, with your audience, and figure out why they're not already in some of your existing always-on campaigns. So if they're not in your always-on campaigns, typically we'll be missing any data points. So again, going through and enriching that data is really, really important. There is also another angle on this, which is whether you're always engaging everybody in your database or not, whether they're relevant for you. You know, we see often in Marketo instances where they're connected to Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics that you've got the invoice contact coming through, the finance person. Those people aren't going to engage or necessarily buy your product or service. So why are you bringing them in the first place? So build it back to your ICP, understand who is in your target audience, and start to remove the people that aren't necessarily relevant anymore. When we talk again about inconsistent or incomplete data, there's a very easy way to look at this, is build smart lists and identify those key fields that you need as part of your customer journey. And if you've never mapped out your customer journey before in Marketo, I highly recommend you do it. It's going to help you define the MQL, the famous phrase of what is an MQL. Actually, by jotting down the key data points that we need to understand about someone to get them through the sales funnel is really, really important. So if I give you an example of JTF Marketing, for example, we collect brand new names by an email address only. We might then make an MQL of that individual if they work in marketing, their company has Marketo, and they are raising a hand, right, or engaging with us at any one point. That allows us to clearly define an MQL. You can get more specific, again, if you're using win-loss data or ICP data to say, we want only people that work in computing software or manufacturing or medical devices, then you can start to identify those either through enrichment technologies or actually by identifying what values are empty. Can someone go and fill those out? And this is a common challenge, right? When we look at data, who actually owns data? Whose responsibility is it to go through and update and enrich those records? I always say it's marketing's responsibility, and I'm sure you'll all curse me for that. Unfortunately, it's our job to make sure that we get good quality leads in front of salespeople. And as soon as the silver spoon is not polished and silver, they will spit it back out. So we've got to just make sure that what we pass over is good quality by profiling correctly and enriching that data set, either using third-party tools or manually. What it will allow us to do is have higher performance campaigns. And that's really, really important when we look at the return on investment for marketing input. Now, we can also look back to the causes, right? Where are we collecting this data from in the first place? Is it coming from Salesforce? Was it an event list upload? You know, what are we doing in order to identify what the source is in order to fix it? Now, depending on your business, you might focus on developing purely email address only forms, which will allow you to get an email address into the database. You might then build up your profile over time using a soft nurture campaign in order to get people opted in, get them engaging, sharing information in exchange for downloads or videos or webinars, whatever it might be. Or you might use enrichment tools. Again, something like Clearbit. You might use something like Apollo, ZoomInfo, whatever the tool might be, using the webhook from Marketo, say, hey, I've got this person's email address, go find out more about them, go bring that data back and enrich my data set. Now, you can also do this with existing data within your database as well. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let us know. We can take off a side conversation about that in terms of enriching the data set as well. Same goes for duplicates. Check the volumes, check the sources of these individuals. Where are they coming from? How do we improve it? How do we reduce the number of duplicates that we're creating? And if it's not something we can fix, again, how do we implement an always-on process? When we talk about validity of email addresses, there's a lot of businesses out there that do email address verification as they capture on their Marketo forms, which is fantastic. But we must remember that people leave their jobs and move on and get progression. Therefore, we need to re-verify every 3 to 6 months in order to check that we've got the relevant people in the database. Again, that will help you keep a clean database overall. We've talked a bit about enrichment already as well. And of course, there is a deeper analysis of data management within our data management handbook. If you'd be interested in that, go to our resources section to download. Of course, this is just talking about data. We could go further. We could start talking about cleaning up Design Studio. We could talk about global smart lists. We could talk about program naming conventions and cleanups. And again, a lot of this can all be driven by mass through the API. So if you're unfamiliar with that, again, feel free to drop us a line to have a conversation. Ultimately, what we can help you do is take that data out of Marketo, analyze it in a spreadsheet, as we all love doing, and then load it back in and rename stuff in the right manner, or move stuff around, archive stuff away, disactivate, enable. There's lots of ways in which we can help you clean up your Marketo instance. Now, we've got a ton of resources available for Marketo. Being specialists in Marketo, we're often sharing information about it. There's some data hygiene must-haves here that are critical for you managing your license fee and keeping on top of your instance. We've got the always-on deduplication service, which has been really popular. We've launched it just under a month ago, and it's become one of the most popular services that we run for a lot of our clients on a regular basis. And we also run training for Marketo as well. So if you'd like to understand how to better use Marketo, we've got training of every level available to you and aligned to the certifications as well. So definitely worth checking that out if you're thinking about getting certified in the new year. Or someone in your team may be considering it as well. If you'd love to have an additional chat or more in-depth chat about your personal circumstances, your Marketo instance, then let us know. We'd love to chat with you and understand exactly what it is that you're challenged with in terms of hygiene within the instance or data hygiene. The two of them sit pretty closely together. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you on the next free to reach out with any additional questions.